All right. Good morning, and Happy New Year. It's Bernard Nomberg with another weekly episode of NOMBERG Law Live, and I've got my buddy Alec Lewis who's coming to me, I think, in Memphis this morning. Is that where you are, Alec?
I am, yeah, Bernard. I covered the bowl game yesterday afternoon. It was a kind of a crazy game, but yeah, it was fun. Memphis has been a fun. I've been here for a bunch of days, so I appreciate you having me on. If I sound
Absolutely, and I know
under
you
the
you really you've stepped up to the plate, that's for sure, and I appreciate you. I know you're a little under the weather right now, but we will not be here very long. But I know you and I are going to have a great conversation because we're going to talk about something that is very passionate for you and for me, and that's college football. Alec,
we can do
before
that.
we before we really get into the bowl games and stuff, let's talk a little bit about your background. You're currently an undergraduate student at Missouri, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. One semester left.
Oh, very good. And I know you've been an avid sports fan and a sports journalist now for several years. I've watched you come through the high school ranks at Mountain Brook High School. So talk to us a little bit about how did you get your passion for sports journalism? I know where the sports part comes from, but let's talk about your journalism a little bit.
It's funny because covering the game yesterday, and I mean, I've covered Missouri football all 4 years that I've been there. I was kind of sitting up in the press box before the game thinking about this type of thing. Like, how did this come to be? Um, so, yeah, I grew up in Mountain Brook. I love sports and college football, as every Mountain Brook kid probably does. I mean, sports in Birmingham and college football in Birmingham is seamless pretty much. So, I love sports. And then when I got to high school, I remember I was in a meeting with the counselor, and she was like, "Well, you need another class. What do you want to do? What do you want to do with your life?" And I was like, "I don't know. I like Paul Feinbaum's show. Like, I want to work in sports or something." She's like, "What about writing for the new school newspaper?" And initially I was like, I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe it'll be interesting, maybe it won't. But she was like, "Well, I'm going to sign you up. You're going to go in there, and if you don't like it, just tell them, and you'll move out of the class." So I go in, and they're like, "Do you want to cover the basketball program?" And I'm like, "I don't even know what that really means, but I'll try to do it." That year, Mountain Brook won its first state championship, and I loved doing it. I tweeted about the games and the players, and it was really, really fun for me. I wrote stories. That kind of developed into it's like, where should I go to school? Can I do this for my life? And what's
Yeah.
this business like? And I studied as much as I could. And Missouri had just joined the SEC. So for me, it seemed like the perfect situation. So I chose Missouri. I've been writing ever since. I've been all over the country writing, it feels like, and I love it. So, like yesterday, I'm sitting up in the press box with Rendezvous Ribs watching a college football game, and I get to write about it. It's like, how can you really beat that?
That's
Um,
right. That's right. What
so
grade were you in when you first started writing? When you first
I think
started covering Mountain Brook sports?
I was a sophomore at Mountain Brook High School. So the meeting with the counselor, I'll never forget, was in the upstairs of the Mountain Brook Junior High School in this random room, and I could like take you to that room right now. For some reason, that conversation is so vivid in my head, and it's just crazy looking back and how much I've gotten to do and people I've talked to and gotten to meet. It's been an incredible ride and
Well,
really,
let's
really
talk.
fun.
Let's go to that sophomore year. You're at your first state championship game. You're covering it. You're sitting courtside. You're looking around, and it's a few minutes before tip off. What's going through your mind at that time?
I remember, I mean, I know it was so hectic. I mean, I'm sitting there with my laptop and knowing I'm going to have to tweet and kind of like, well, I don't really know the history of this whole thing. And I knew Coach McMillan, Bucky McMillan, pretty well. And I knew a lot of the players on the team just from like, I grew up playing basketball. But I think what was going on through my head, like, don't mess anything up as much as I can. I mean, just enjoy it also and don't mess anything up. And I think like, I don't know. Basketball in Alabama and Birmingham is such an interesting topic of conversation. And I remember like looking up and at the BJCC and Mountain Brook had so many of the fans in neon, and it was an incredible atmosphere that I think stuck with me, and it was like the reason why I think still want to do this
Sure.
to this day.
Absolutely. Well, I followed you for the last several years. Your passion certainly comes out. But before we leave Mountain Brook high school experience, I want you to take us to your senior year, Mountain Brook High School, through the playoffs, through the end of the season. What was that like for you? Because the guys on the court, I'm presuming, are some of your buddies from childhood.
Right, some of my best friends, and it was such an interesting thing. And I don't know how much I knew then about journalism and like being unbiased and doing all, but I did really like try to be fair and honest with a lot of the guys on the team. And that's funny because it's like a lot of my best friends and like my first cousin Jordan Rich, who I grew up with, and like my uncle Craig, that's my mom's brother. So I like he would play, and I would had things to say, and sometimes you can say them, sometimes you can't.
Right. That's
But
right.
I remember like that was, I mean, played Hoover in the championship, lost the game, and I remember a lot of my best friends who played on the team were really sad after. And for me, it was just a crazy experience. But it was, I mean, it's like senior year now. It's like a culmination of everything that you work toward. Even for me, like I view it, I think a lot of people ask me, like, fuels you? But what fuels you? I think this business is as competitive almost sometimes as the sports on the field. And I think like I love competition. I grew up playing sports too, so that's part of it
Sure.
for sure.
Well, Alec, you leave the high school experience and then you come to Missouri, where you know very few people. I assume you knew some of the folks maybe in the journalism department. You start to learn or meet some of the folks in the sports department. You're now 4 years into this. I'm assuming you befriended some of those athletes who were in the various sports teams at Missouri. But what did the high school experience teach you? Because you had your friends you were covering. What did that teach you, and that you've had to now incorporate into the last 4 years? And now you're going to, I'm assuming you're taking this beyond graduation to become a
Yeah,
professional. So what did that
that's a
teach you about how you cover those athletes?
that's a really good question. I think it did teach me a lot in terms of like I don't know. With my Mountain Brook friends, I would see them like at people's houses, and we would hang out and do these things. With these Missouri athletes, I'll see them at bars or downtown or in these situations, and I think I just know like for me myself, I enjoy kind of having fun as my like a college kid too sometimes, and I think like I don't try to talk to them or annoy them with questions when they're just trying to be college kids as well. And I think
Sure.
that's the biggest thing I've learned through this whole thing is these athletes that we love and we adore and we wear their number on our back. They're really just humans and kids sometimes in this whole day in this whole thing. And it's like I try to treat them as that more than anything else. So I think that's what I
Absolutely.
learned even in high school. But it's interesting, like after last night's game, and I know I'm sure we'll talk about it, but like Drew Lock was standing there and like we kind of shared a moment. It's like 4 years of me covering Drew Lock. And I remember when he was a freshman, he couldn't even talk to the media. And now, I mean, he's become the face of the program and will be for a long time. And so it's
Absolutely.
interesting the balance that you have to play in terms of trying to build relationships, but also like I'm a media member, they're an athlete, they're not my friend. I mean, they have friends of their own. I have friends of my own. So you want to be close with these guys, but there's only so you can only get so close, really.
Yeah, because you've got a job to do.
Right,
You really
right.
do. I want to thank everybody who's rolling in. I want to give you a heads up, Alec. I see you've got some family members on here live. So, talking about being a college kid, I just want to give you a heads up about where you go with with that part of the conversation. Of course, I'm kidding,
That
guys.
is no, it's one thing. Like I will say, and like this is yeah, this is try to get brownie points for my family, but like they have been so supportive of me through this whole thing, and I think if you look at the field of journalism and the business of it, it's sometimes hard to probably be supportive when your child is wanting to enter this field. But I think I've tried to ease that with how hard I've tried to work, so it balances itself out. But I appreciate them being here on this New Year's
Well,
Day
sure,
morning.
sure. Well, Alec, I can tell you as a father of two college kids, well, one, Sydney's graduated, when
Right.
you see the passion come out in the work that you're doing, when you see the hard work, the dedication, the love of your newfound profession that you're learning and enjoying every day, as a parent, you see that and you take great pride. And I know that your parents have great pride in what you're doing because it comes out every day in the work that you're doing. So I applaud, and you keep doing you is what I'm trying to say. But
I
let's
appreciate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And good morning to everybody. I'm talking with Alec Lewis, who is a sports reporter. He's at the University of Missouri. I want you to share a little bit of your experience because I know you've worked out west. I know you've worked for the Kansas City Star, the Athletic. Talk to us a little bit about your experiences the last 4 years.
Yeah, so I got really lucky before I even got to Missouri. I had a connection on the student newspaper, and he was like, "Hey, we need an assistant sports editor for this fall," and that was the fall of my freshman year. So I walked in as the assistant sports editor, and I guess my Mountain Brook work allowed that to be a thing, but I was still very lucky to work for the student newspaper at Missouri as an assistant sports editor as a freshman. And from there, I did a news internship with the Columbia Daily Tribune. I covered, like, for people that don't really know how, like, I covered a goat show. I wrote about roundabouts in the city of Columbia. I covered the building of a sidewalk, and that news internship led to working for the Kansas City Star, covering Missouri, and then working for the Milwaukee newspaper, and then back in Missouri for another paper, and then Yahoo Sports in Los Angeles. And now I've been writing for the Athletic this fall, covering Missouri football. So it's been a long road, but I think that's the biggest thing I've tried to learn is like take something from each spot that I've been in terms of location, like going to Milwaukee and living there for a summer, and what can I learn from this? And then also just from the outlet like Yahoo Sports and the emphasis they've put on the app that they have and the rights that they have with other sports league, like Yahoo's airing NBA and NFL games right now, and I got to learn a lot about behind the scenes what goes into that. So I've tried to learn as much through these outlets and these places as been able to. So I've really enjoyed it, really.
And you're getting such great hands-on experience. Not only are you learning the tools of your trade, but you're also meeting the right people or the people who could then help propel you on to the whatever is next for you in life. And I know that college seniors hate this question, but I got to ask you, what's next in life after you graduate in the spring? Have you figured out the next step?
It's a good question. I've gotten it. It was funny. Last night I was with a bunch of people, and I think it was like I don't know. I should have tallied it probably, but I like answering it. It's fun for me. What's next? I guess I've had a bunch of interviews with a bunch of places. Nothing is officially official. But I do. I mean, I tell people all the time, like I love the city of Birmingham, and I love Mountain Brook, and I loved growing up there, and all my friends from high school I still keep in touch with. But I will say, like, I want to cover sports at the highest level, and in Birmingham, outside of Alabama and Auburn football, it's hard to probably do that in that city. And I love the South. So I look at places like Dallas, Nashville, New Orleans as places I would love to be, places I've had somewhat conversations with. So that would probably be the best bet as far as where I'll be next. But I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'm sure it'll develop here in the next couple of days for sure.
Well, I know you're going to enjoy the next 5 or 6 months as well. Guys, I want to say good morning. We've got several folks who are watching us. Had some nice comments. Steve Altman, Happy New Year to you, bud. Hey, Spencer Lynch, I bet you're out in that beautiful weather in San Diego. Happy New Year to you, too. I know you both know Alec very well. Alec, let's talk about, I recently interviewed someone who you know very well, Lars Anderson. Lars,
Oh,
as
for
you know,
sure.
guys lives here locally. He's a Nebraskan by heart, but he married an Alabama woman and now calls Alabama home. He had some high praise for you when we spoke a few weeks back. Alec, who do you count as your mentors? Who are your go-tos in your profession doing sports journalism?
Lars is certainly one of them, and it's funny because when I was a senior in high school, I think, so Lars teaches at Alabama as well. And when I was a
Hmm.
senior in high school, he lives like right around the corner, and I reached out to him. I was like, "Hey, can we go get a cup of coffee at Starbucks. We met at the Starbucks in Cahaba Heights. I'll never forget it. We sat outside. I had a list of questions to ask him. I printed out a piece of paper to ask him questions. And I remember one of the questions was like, what do you think about college? Like, what do you think I should try to do? And he was very big. Although he teaches at Alabama, he was very big. He was like, the Missouri experience is something that I think would benefit you for a long time to come. And I'll never forget that. Lars and I keep in touch. I was on his radio show before the Missouri-Alabama game earlier this year with Jay
I heard
Barker.
that interview. I heard that.
Yeah, it was very fun. So Lars is a guy, like, I remember there was a game this year where he texted me. He's like, Drew Lock better be the lead of this story, Alec. Like, you had, and so like that's very fun. He's definitely a guy. Izzy Gould, who used to cover Alabama, he's currently the sports director of the New Orleans and Birmingham, I guess AO.com and NOLA.com. He's a guy I've met with for so many times over the course of my high school and since I got to college. And then I would say there are a bunch of Missouri writers. I mean, I point to guys like, and it's going to be like Wright Thompson, who writes for ESPN the magazine, went to Missouri, and he's a guy who I can text if he writes this thing. He wrote about Tua, and I texted him like, "Why did you put this in this story here?" And he's very funny, very. I mean, he's such a big name that like for him to take time to share words with me is like an honor, and also like, I mean, that's. Like, I think when a lot of kids see, like, when an Alabama fan meets Tua, they're probably like, oh, my, this is the greatest thing ever. When I get to talk to Wright Thompson, that's, like, my moment where it's like, this is, to me, the coolest thing ever. So those are a few guys. The greatest thing about Missouri is there are so many alumni in the field and that have done it. Like, Pat Forty is a guy who is at Yahoo, and we, like, ate lunch before the SEC basketball tournament last year. So, like, that Missouri connection has been one of the greatest things, and I'm so thankful. And I guess I can't wait till when I can pay it forward to people too, because that's just, it feels like that you sign up for that, and it's such a fun thing to sign up for, really.
Alec, I got news for you. You're already paying it forward, bud. You don't realize it, but you already are, because by reaching back out to those names and those folks you just talked to, that brings them as much joy as it does for you. You're learning from them, but I can assure you, each of those guys who you've just mentioned, and probably many more who you haven't mentioned, they enjoy it. They look forward to it. Some of them may be crotchety. Some of them may be mean, kind of like your dad is at times. No, I'm just kidding, John. But you understand. You just keep doing what you're doing. Now, I realize it's only been 24 hours. I know that it's still fresh, but we got to talk about yesterday's game. We got to talk about Drew Luck. Let's just talk about the obvious. What happened in that last drive? I know there's things going through your mind. Why? Everyone does that. Everybody's an armchair quarterback. But what did you see? What's your perspective? What did you hear?
Well, it's really interesting because Missouri's starting wide receiver, Emmanuel Hall, he caught a pass in the first quarter, a long, deep pass, and tweaked a groin injury from earlier in the year. And Emmanuel has been Drew's go-to guy the last 2 years. He's been the guy that Drew has always relied on, and he'll be an NFL draft. I mean, Emmanuel Hall will be probably a top 4-round pick in the NFL draft, assuming he's healthy. So Emmanuel goes down in the first quarter. Missouri at one point was down by 16 points, I believe. And I thought without Emmanuel, I was like, I don't know how Missouri can win this game. I mean, I knew it was like, okay, Drew Lock's going to have to put the team on his shoulders, but I didn't even know if that was remotely possible. And he did. I mean, there was a long, deep pass to Jonathan Johnson, a kid from Memphis, here in Memphis, and it was a really cool thing to see him. He's from a place called Orange Mound, which is, I mean, if you know Memphis, it's just not the best area. And so to do that in front of family was so awesome for him. And then you get into this fourth quarter, and there were so many decisions made and I guess not made. And I mean, the final drive was one where Missouri had the ball with 5 minutes left, down 5 points. Drew Lock had the ball in his hands, the guy you want to have the ball, and they drove it down the field. There was a minute left. It was a 4th and 1, and Missouri elected to go with the read option play. Drew Lock kept it. He thought he would have a step. He didn't. He dove for the first down marker, didn't get it. He was like a foot short. There was a lot made about the play. Was it the correct play call? What would you have done, etc.? It's easy to hindsight's always really nice in those situations. But I do think I would have liked to have seen Drew like have the ball in his hands to be able to throw it in that situation. And I know that would have been a little risky on a 4th and 1, but I'd put the ball in the hands of the guy who will be making millions of dollars to throw footballs next year. So it was really interesting. There was a lot to that drive. There was a play that was called back. It was a long 32-yard pass. I thought the toe tapped, but it was called an incomplete pass. And so I don't know. It's funny. Right. It's funny because you get on Twitter and all these Missouri fans like, oh, this is a terrible play. And it's so I like to look at the whole of the game. And there were times early where Missouri was being really conservative with play calling. And that catches up to you. There was also a missed field goal. So you didn't get to, if you'd have made that field goal, then you could have made a field goal to win the game. So there's a lot to it. It was really interesting, and I was really impressed, frankly, by Oklahoma State. I didn't think they had what they showed yesterday. So it was an interesting game to cover, but it was fun. I mean, the Liberty Bowl is a fun place to watch the game, so it was a really good time.
It is. There's never just one play. It may be in the sidewalk journalist's eye, it was this one play that created the loss or led to the win. But you're right. You have to look at the totality of any game. Look at the Alabama game. They go up 28-0 in a nanosecond. They start to get conservative because I'm assuming they want to keep the ball out of Oklahoma's potent offense. They want to slow down the game for them. But in the second half of the game, look what happened. Oklahoma sure made it a heck of a game and made a whole bunch of Bama fans very, very nervous. But talk about what you saw there in the second half of that game. Let's kind of shift for a minute to that game.
Yeah, no, I said before the game, and I think I tweeted this, like I had this weird feeling about Kyler Murray and Oklahoma, and like Lincoln Riley and Kyler Murray have such a good connection in terms of play calling and the ability to execute a play that as good as Alabama is, and I tweeted, I was like, I never picked against Alabama or Nick Saban just because. Why would I pick against Alabama or Nick Saban? Because they don't give me a reason to do that. But I think the second half showed what Kyler Murray really showed all year in terms of he was the best player in terms of being able to create at times when there was nothing. There was no way to create. He did it, and it was. I think for him, he did what it took to somehow keep Oklahoma in arm's length away. I know I think it was 45-33, but when it was 28-0, I didn't know if Alabama was about to try to score 70 points. You never know in that situation. I was also really surprised by Tua looked so healthy through the course of the game, and I had heard through people and some of the team doctors are close to Mountain Brook. Like I had heard that Tua really wasn't that healthy, so I didn't expect that at all. But the dude is such a talent that it was a really interesting contest, and I thought Oklahoma made it somewhat close, even though they really weren't ever really in it.
In that second half, they really kept everybody's attention because Murray showed the Oakland Athletics all by drafting him in the top 10 in that spring. The fastest speed from A to B that I've seen in a long, long time. But I think, just as my uneducated opinion, I think he's going to have a much brighter future in baseball. But that's just me.
I tell people on that it's really interesting because it's like, I don't know, NFL guys sometimes say like maybe he's too small or whatever. But I think my dad and I might have been talking about this over the break. I was like, if in anything, you choose the thing you love to do. And he's a kid from Texas. If he loves football, like pursue that. And and you make the decision and try to move on with it and not look back. So I hope for him, he chooses what he loves to do most more than like the money, because I think he'll thrive in whichever he chooses.
He is a talented athlete, but talking about talented athletes, Drew Luck is going to leave a huge hole this spring. But you guys have just picked up, I think, a pretty darn good replacement out of Clemson. Talk about Mr. Bryant and what you're expecting to see from him in the spring.
Yeah, so that was the biggest news of the year for Missouri, and it really cemented Barry Odom getting an extension because I think at times this year people were wondering if Barry Odom was going to be gone after particular games. And no, I remember Kelly Bryant visited for the Kentucky game. He was on the field before the game. I kind of watched him bounce around, talk to everyone. The recruiting team at Missouri had a plan on every single thing that day, from a certain meeting with the coach for an hour to show him what they had planned for him, to how are we going to get Kelly down to the field? Okay, we're going to bring him down these stairs. We're going to bring him down this path. I mean, everything was really laid out because he meant that much to Barry Odom and this Missouri team. So when he committed, I mean, obviously Missouri folks were about as happy as they have been probably in a long, long time. And I do think he will bring, I mean, Missouri was going to, you're right, exactly, that Drew Lock was going to leave a huge hole, and Kelly Bryant should be able to fill it. And I think Missouri fans will have high expectations next year, as they should. It's funny, like, these last 4 years for Missouri have been really tough and up and down, and the football product has oftentimes been very end. It's, of course, the year after, you know how this works, the year after I leave, they really get it going. Of course, that's how it works. But no, Missouri, the staff poured everything in to get Kelly Bryant, and it was shocking. They kind of beat out Gus Malzahn in the end, to earn the commitment. But it shows, I guess, what Barry Odom has established with Drew Lock at the helm here at Missouri.
That, and I think that he's going to have a pretty good supporting cast coming back to play and distribute the ball around next fall. Alec, let's talk about when we talk about Kelly Bryant, Jalen Hurts, Barnett, all of these high-profile quarterbacks, and the list goes on in the last several years, but it's been going on for many, many years. But with the advent of social media being so important and everybody's move is analyzed, it's easy to criticize. Well, Kelly Bryant got beaten out by Lawrence, so I'm just going to leave and go somewhere else. It's too easy to say that. It's too easy to say, well, he just gave up. But that's not what is at stake. And I know you see it from a different perspective than someone who's not in journalism. There's so much money at stake. What are you seeing? What are you hearing from those perspectives?
No, that's a good question. And my dad and I had a long conversation about this. And I will say, like, what Jalen Hurts has done at Alabama is exceptional. And the way he's handled the entire situation is like a dream if you're a parent, if you're a coach. I mean, it's such an incredible, I mean, he's laid such an incredible, like, foundational path for what works. But the other side of it is, like, these guys, I mean, they go to school and they play football, and it's their love, and they love doing it. And if they can't do that, and they maybe have to wait a year to be able to do the thing they love to do, or maybe they can go immediately and transfer. I mean, it feels like that would be a fine situation. If you love to do something and you want to do it, I think I'm always for, like, going to do that if you can do it immediately. And I think in Kelly Bryant's case, he was told, look, like, Trevor Lawrence is going to start. If you want to stay here and maybe back him up and see where this thing takes you, you can do it. Or, you know what, you can go visit schools and pick the best one for you, and then you'll get to play immediately next year. And I always think, like, what if you and your job, or the, like, if I'm writing it's like, you know what, you're going to have to wait a year until you write again. Feel like, no, I want to write right now. Like, why can't I just go write right now? And I think Jalen Hurts has made it to where it looks like, I mean, that can really work for you. And I think really Jalen just a really special kid in terms of being able to handle the situation. I'm always for, I mean, these guys, like I said, they're kids and they're humans, and they have a talent and they want to use that talent. And if they can do that in a better situation somewhere else, I don't see why they can't do that. And I get why people like, well, you should sit it out. But in this day and age, I mean, what would the games be without the players? So I think it makes total sense to me that these guys do what they want to do, and really, I mean, pursue the path that they want to pursue.
Yeah, they only have 5 years to play for. And I did find it to be interesting or a coincidence that first game when the announcement was coming out that Bryant had left the program, Lawrence got his bell rung on the sidelines and the backup had to play some. So it really even fueled the discussion even more at that time. Um,
Yeah,
Thank you guys
no,
for tuning in so far. Excuse me, Alec. I wanted to welcome everybody. I'm talking with Alec Lewis, a superstar sports journalist out of Missouri. He's from Birmingham, Mountain Brook, and has such a great passion. You guys have got to start following him on social, particularly when he's tweeting about ball games that he's watching. So he's not only is he passionate about his sports, he's passionate about his writing. He's incredibly intelligent and knows what he's talking about. And Alec, I appreciate you giving me a few times on New Year's Day, and we're getting to the close to the end, and now's my time. I'm going to run through the games that are going on today. I think the first one starts in about 30 minutes, and I want to get some insights, some predictions, and some thoughts about today's games and about next Monday's game, of course. Let's see. The first game we got coming up, I want to say, is Mississippi State 8-4 versus Iowa down at the Outback Bowl. What do you think about that game today?
it's an interesting one. You always wonder in these bowl games, like who's going to be the who's so motivated, who's maybe not. I don't know. I think like my dad was asking me when I was home. I mean, what does it say about the SEC if they're performing in bowl games versus not performing in bowl games? I think it's hard to like make a generalization about a conference off of what they do in bowl games. But I would say, I mean, I haven't seen Iowa much this year, but Mississippi State, I do think will be motivated. Joe Moorhead's first year as a head coach, and I think when you're a first-year head coach, you want to win the first bowl game that you get to. So I assume Mississippi State will be very motivated, and I would have to side with them in the Outback Bowl in Florida. I think fans will probably travel. Iowa's not that close in terms of distance, so I would probably lean towards the first-year head coach in the SEC program in that game.
I think those are great insights. I always like to look at the quarterbacks. I want to see how experienced they are, and I know that doesn't always play out because you have exceptional talents like Tua and a lot of these freshman guys, Trevor Lawrence. But Nick Fitzgerald being such an experienced quarterback, really, I think he brings such a great quantifier, or excuse me, the extra to the game. All right, let's move on. Penn State is playing Kentucky, the Citrus Bowl today. They kick off, I think, at maybe 12 o'clock. Gosh, Kentucky's had such a good year this year.
They had. No, you're exactly right. And the big part of that was the win at Missouri on the last play of the game. There was no time on the clock, and there was a pass interference after a pass interference called on Missouri, and there was a lot of controversy about it. But Kentucky ended up winning. They kind of like the players kind of gathered on the field, but. No, I mean, I think I don't know much about Penn State this year and James Franklin, what he's done, but you're right. Kentucky has had a really, really good year. Their running attack is some of the best in college football by far. And defensively, they've been really good. They held Missouri, I think, to under 20, which was kind of a real impressive thing for defenses against Missouri this year. So, I don't know. Kentucky, Mark Stoops has done a good job. I think they've given him time there. I think he's been there 5 or 6 years. And you want wins immediately, and you want to be in bowl games like this immediately. But sometimes it takes time. Mark Stoops has proven that. It'll be a big one today. It's been a kind of a statement year they were in the top 10 earlier this year. There was like an ad in Times Square for Kentucky football, which is like, what is going? But no, I think it'd be a big win for the Wildcats today.
Well, that's you mentioned that he's been there for that long. Coach Mason at Vanderbilt now is in I think his 5th season. So both of those programs have their guys in. So it's rare these days that coaches get to stay that long if they're not going to bowls, if they're not being productive. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with both of those programs the next couple of years, because now they've got their feet there, they've got their athletes, so to speak, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the Buckeyes versus UW. This is in the Rose Bowl late today or this afternoon. Ohio State versus Washington. I know Ohio State fans are why weren't we in the top 4? Well, I don't even want to go there today because we could talk about that all day.
You're right.
Talk to me. What do you think about this?
So this is Urban Meyer's last game coaching Ohio State, and I mean it's wild that it's come to be that situation. It was a really tumultuous year for him and the Ohio State program as a whole. I mean, as it should have been.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, you wonder, do they want to win for Urban Meyer? I mean, Dwayne Haskins is the guy that will probably be the first quarterback taken in the NFL draft. I mean, I was talking to Trent Dilfer a couple months ago. We were talking about Dwayne Haskins, just what he's done, and I think you talked about quarterbacks. You like to look at quarterbacks. This could be his last game, assuming he'll go pro. And so I don't know. I would like to side with Urban Meyer on his last day and Dwayne Haskins probably on his last day. A guy who's really, I think, shocked. I didn't think he was going to be this good this year, Dwayne Haskins at quarterback for Ohio State. So I'd probably lean Ohio State. The Rose Bowl is always one of my favorites. I love the atmosphere. I got to go up to Pasadena this summer and see that place. It's incredible. So, yeah, I would probably lean Ohio State, but it'll be interesting. It really will.
It is. Haskins is, I think, he's a statistical leader in touchdowns and yards this year in college football, and it's a beautiful setting. They need more lights at night. I was at the Texas Alabama championship game, and it's so dark in the end zones. Anyway, moving on. Here's a good one. LSU is taking on last year's hypothetical. We were the national champs. UCF. What about us? What about us? Big Shirt. And who do you think? Who do you like in that game?
Well, it's funny
And
because
UCF's quarterback, does the quarterback play or is he out?
I think he is out. But the funny thing is that UCF's coach is Josh Heupel, who was Missouri's offensive coordinator last year, and he stepped in. And I mean, look, they haven't missed a beat at all from Scott Frost, who's now at Nebraska. And it's interesting. I didn't expect them to do what they've done this year. And McKenzie Milton, the spectacular quarterback, it got hurt. It was tough to see, but they've really rallied since his injury. I don't know if LSU's up for the game, it would feel like they would have the superior athletes, and it would be interesting to see what happens to UCF if they get beat by an SEC school with the schedule they play and the talk that they talk. So I don't know. That's a toss up for me. I kind of feel like UCF probably is going to be really up for it. It's their national championship again, so you never know.
And I think it depends on which version of LSU shows up. If it's the version of LSU that took care of business against Georgia, I think LSU wins this game. But LSU also has 3 losses, 2 of which were not good losses for them. So we'll see
Right.
how motivated LSU is. Now, the game that I'm really looking forward to is at the end of the day. That's the Sugar Bowl. That's the Longhorns versus the Dogs. I like both teams. I like Georgia more. I think Georgia, and this will lead me into our last topic, and we're a couple of minutes from being done, Bud, and I appreciate you sticking around.
Yeah, no problem.
I, like a lot of people in the South, thought Georgia should have been in the top 4, the Final Four, instead of Notre Dame, and it's easy to yell that now that Notre Dame put up another goose egg. But I think Georgia will take care of business against Texas, but I wouldn't count out Texas. They've had they took care of business against Oklahoma the first time those 2 teams played.
They did, yeah. And Missouri played Texas in the bowl game last year, so you saw that they really showed up for Tom Herman.
Yeah.
Like you said, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think Georgia was one of the 3 best teams in the country, and it's really unfortunate that they were, in a sense, punished by the SEC championship that they were really, really close to probably putting away. And I think tonight, DeAndre Baker, their star cornerback, I don't think he's playing, and that will probably hurt them against Texas. But you also don't know. Like, is Georgia going to be kind of mad and motivated to just beat the pulp out of Texas, or are they going to kind of? I mean, it's a bowl game, doesn't really mean anything. Texas might be motivated to kind of lay the foundation for what Tom Herman wants to see in his program.
Yeah.
So you never know. I have to side Georgia because I know how good of a coach Kirby Smart is and how good of a motivator he is. And I think if you look at Jake Fromm and his progression this year, I just think Georgia is kind of in the driver's seat there. So we'll see. But I do agree with you. Like I mean, Notre Dame was undefeated and I guess deserving. But I said, like, I thought Missouri could have beat Notre Dame in a sense. And so
Hey, Vanderbilt should have beaten Notre Dame at Notre Dame this year.
right. No. And so I mean, going against Clemson and Trevor Lawrence, who's just like an incredible true freshman quarterback, I just thought they had really no chance, and it showed. I mean, it was kind of a joke, and so you wonder. I mean, I know Georgia players were tweeting and like it was the true
Yeah.
best four as they should be. I mean, they clearly I thought were one of the three best teams in the country. So it'll be
Well,
interesting to see what happens.
I don't think Bama wanted round two with Georgia again in the Final Four. But let's, in closing, let's get your final thoughts on round four of Dabo versus Nick, the Tigers versus the Tide, an epic battle that's set for Monday night for all the marbles once again. What do you see?
It's
What do
been
you think?
It's funny because I was talking with one of my best friend's dad yesterday, and I remember growing up in Alabama, and you always heard about Alabama football. And I remember like one year under Mike Shula, I think Alabama was like 7-5 or something, and we went to some restaurant to watch Glenn Coffey, the running back, and I was like, well, this Alabama football thing, like these people really care. It'd be amazing if they actually started to win a lot of football games. And then I remember, I'll never forget where I was when I found out Nick Saban was hired. I was at my next door neighbor's in his backyard playing basketball, and I got a notification on my phone, or I don't know if I had a phone then, but I somehow found out that Nick Saban had been hired, and the rest has been history. And it's crazy to see what they have done. It's been fun for me just to see it, and I know my dad's a huge Alabama fan. I've never like sided that much with the team, and I don't. Maybe that's the unbiased journalist in me, but I will say, I mean, it's crazy what Clemson has done building a program. You look across the field, and always know Alabama has guys at every position, 5 stars at every position, and Clemson has built this thing to where they do too. Trevor Lawrence as a true freshman, I don't know if I've ever seen a true freshman quarterback that's this good this early. I mean, there was an NFL GM I heard that said if he came out for the draft this year, he would be the number one pick by far, not even a question.
Wow.
And then you look at what they have on the outside and receivers and what they showed against Notre Dame. It's impressive. But like I said earlier, like I can't pick against Nick Saban in Alabama. You give them a week to prepare. I know it's Clemson. I know it's Trevor Lawrence. But, I mean, with what Tua is capable of and what Alabama is capable of and Quentin Williams on the defensive side, I mean, it's a machine, and I just don't think it's going to be stopped this year. I really, really don't.
Maybe number two is the X factor for this game. However
Could
they're
be.
going to use Jalen, you never know. You're right. They've got another week. They've probably been preparing for Clemson for a few weeks now, but I'm looking forward to it, as is all college football fans. Well, Alec, I can't thank you enough for stepping up, and I know you're a little under the weather today and hurting from that loss yesterday, but I hope you have a great new year. I wish you the very best with your career. I'm certainly going to be following you. I want you to come back and watch me in 2 weeks. I got Jeff Pearlman coming on, who I know you know of very well.
Yeah.
But I wish you the very best and Happy New Year to you, and I'll be
Well,
following your career.
thank you so much for having me, Bernard. Seriously, I really enjoyed this. It was really fun. You do a good job with these, and I mean, it's fun to like having Lars was awesome to see, and Jeff is a guy who's one of the best writers in the country by far. So you'll enjoy that. But I appreciate it. If I sound, I've had sinus stuff all of these last 3 days. I was in the press box like chugging Dasani water bottles to see if I could keep. I felt like I was playing or something
Yeah.
with how I felt, but. No, I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the kind words. And I know my dad was excited to see that I was on here. So, like I said, thank you for the time. It's been fun, and I'll be following too. If I can ever be on again, I'd love to be on again for sure.
But I'm going to have you on again in the future when you get to your next step. But guys, thank you for tuning in with us this morning. Happy New Year to everybody who's watching this live. We appreciate all the kind comments and the shout outs, as we do every Tuesday at 10 o'clock, NOMBERG LAW Live. Even New Year's Day, we come to you with some good stuff. I'm signing off for now, but you guys take care, and we'll catch you again next week. Be well.